good night, good night, good night. I'm here and we are talking copyright tonight. I will just wait a few minutes again. I know I'm a bit early, so I'll wait until it's 8:30 sharp and then we'll get into the discussion. I hope you looked at the photos on the page and you are ready to discuss copyright and drop your questions and your comments below. Okay, so I'm gonna wait for a few minutes. For those who don't know, I am Akila Phillip and I am the founder of Let's Talk Intellectual Property, and it is an entertainment consultancy service whereby I give you advice, information, training on all your IP needs, all your creative needs, and your legal concerns regarding it. So I am going to jump in since it is 8:30 sharp. I must apologize before. I know I said I was going to be here at 6 p.m. but unfortunately, due to circumstances way beyond my control, I really could not make it for 6 p.m. so apologies for the change in time. So that may account for the late start. So I'm gonna start. Well, one of the first things I always like to ensure and let people understand that copyright is it has to be something tangible. So for instance, ideas, concepts are not subject to copyright protection. You have to move your idea from just being something that's intangible, something that's in your mind, and you have to put it in a permanent or a fixation. You have to actually have it in a way that it can be seen as a tangible object. So that's one of the first things I always want persons to remember, that copyright is tangible. And when you're thinking about copyright, you have to think about literary and artistic work. So you're looking at artwork, you're looking at music, you're looking at dance, you're looking at literary works like books, for example, magazines. So copyright pertains to literary and artistic work. That is something that you must always bear in mind when you're thinking about copyright. And once you move your idea from just something in your mind and you put it into something that's fixated, it then attracts copyright protection. It must have, at bare minimum, some measure of originality. And copyright doesn't require any formalities. So, for instance, in some jurisdictions, you are required, you should go and deposit your copyright work, or there is measures that must be taken upon creation. However, in Trinidad and Tobago, copyright arises upon creation. There's no other formalities to follow for it to be protected, for your copyright work to be protected, right? So always bear that in mind when you're creating, that copyright is applies to literary and artistic work, and it also does not require any formalities. So always bear that in mind. Now, something that I always advise people to do when you are creating any sort of creative work is that you should take steps to protect your literary or artistic work. Because there's no formalities required for it to be protected, you should take measures to document your creative journey. So you should always, seek to take photos of yourself creating your work, or sketch if you're an artist or a designer, that you should try to find ways that you can document it. And we lived in a technology age, so if you take videos of yourself, selfies, those kind of things, so that you always have the necessary proof of you are the original author of the work in question. Another key and important thing to do is that when you are, as a creative person, when you are doing creating any literary or artistic work, and you decide that it's not just going to be you alone creating that work, but you're going to get into a joint collaboration, for instance, with more than one person, you should always seek to have a formalized agreement. Don't engage in any business arrangement without having formalized arrangements and written agreements going into the creative process, because creativity is so fluid. So you may go into the creative process not really deciding how you're going to allot each person's contribution, and at the end of the process you have a product, but you haven't decided how are the returns going to be split, how are the royalties going to be distributed. So those are some of the discussions you should have throughout the creative process, either at the beginning or at the end, preferably at the beginning, but you should also always seek to have a written agreement to decide how is that going to be distributed. If you are collaborating, you're designing with somebody, or you're collaborating for music, or even a book, that is something that you should always seek to have a discussion about. Now, this is a question that people always ask me in terms of when they sell a creative product. If you have created, let's say for example, a painting, and you sell the painting, what you are selling is the painting of itself. IP is something that is tangible, and it attracts something called moral rights. So while you may be selling the painting, you are not selling your intellectual property interest in it. You're not giving over to that person your IP. You're conducting a business transaction, so you retain your moral rights. And when I say moral rights, it refers to your ability as a creator to be identified as a person who is the author of that work. That never diminishes. If you have a business transaction, that doesn't take away from it. So don't think because you're selling a painting to somebody that you don't have the right to be identified thereafter as the person who created it. That right remains with you unless you do an assignment where you give that person all your copyright interests, and an assignment is a full out disposal of all your, not just the financial transaction, but your IP interest in it. Feel free to ask any questions so that I could respond as I go along. Now, the term of copyright lasts for your entire lifetime. Yes, it's a long time. And 50 years after that. So you really want to make sure that you take proper measures to protect your work. And you want to make sure that you have as much documentary evidence as possible, because it's something that you could put in your will and you could pass on to your children, and they could pass on to their children, because 50 years after that is a long period of time. Also, because you don't have formality, you want to document the process because it's something that you can earn from. So going back to what I was saying, whenever you are entering into a business transaction, collaborating, or even for your own creative process, you should always engage in proper contracts. Contracts are so essential, because if you don't have contracts in place, it wouldn't be as clear-cut to identify you as the owner of the creative work. So you really need to ensure that you have your business structure of your creativity side of what you do properly documented and in a proper legal structure. Now, after the 50 years, because as I said, it's your lifetime, and 50 years after that, what happens to the work? It goes into the public domain, meaning that it is free for other persons to now use the work. So that is what it's a long period of time that you have with the work you would have created for yourself and for your family to benefit. So you really want to make sure that you have the proper legal measures in place so that you are able to maximize your earning potential. Which takes me to my last point, that when you create, you want to earn as much as you can from it. So you need to have your business side of your creativity in place, because that will set the foundation for you to be able to have license agreements. If you want to exploit, let's say, your music, you want to make sure that your contracts are fully has all the necessary provisions in it that identifies who you are as a creator and your IP interests. So there's no doubt when it comes to entering into a license with a potential business opportunity, that you are the creator, and there's no doubt as to who the rights belong to. I hope you found this informative and you were able to follow my points, and you looked, and if you want, you can always go to the photo section of my page. I have the same points up there, or you could comment on the video and I would always respond. So good night and thanks for viewing.